Okay, we are going to finish the review, and I'm just going to throw out one other kind of problem which is on your test but not in the review. Sometimes we don't review every kind of problem that is given to you. And that is essentially giving you 3 points and asking you, given 3 points, is something a right triangle? So I'm going to go back and give you, let's see, is the point, are the 3 lengths 9, 12, 15 in a triangle? Do these give you a right triangle? Well, when will that happen? That will happen only if the Pythagorean theorem is true. You'll have a right triangle if a squared plus b squared, the 2 legs squared, the sum of the 2 legs squared equals the square of the hypotenuse. That's the only time we know that for real this is a right triangle. So we're going to decide the 2 legs are always smaller than the hypotenuse, so we know that 9 is 1 leg, 12 is the other, and the largest length, 15, is the hypotenuse. And we're going to try this out, see if it's true. Is 81 plus 144 equal to, let's see, 225, I believe. Well, let's see, 4 and 1 is 5, 8 and 4 is 12. Yep, 225 is 225, so yes, indeed, this is a right triangle. All right, now let's move on to 11.5, which is the last section. This is still 11.4, and it's the kind of problem you'll have on the test. Let's move on to 11.5. And 11.5 is talking again about the distance and midpoint formulas. There are 2 types of questions. One is finding the midpoint between 2 points, and the other is the distance between 2 points. You'll notice on the test, if you look on page 757, that numbers 23, 24, and 25, and these are going to be the same on the test that I give you, ask you for both. Do not forget, if they ask you to do both, do both. If you just give me one answer, you'll immediately get just a half off. Okay, so given, I'm going to do number 30. I'll do 1 with a distance formula and 1 with a midpoint formula. If we have the points -1 and -3, and 9 and -13, and we're asked to find the distance between the points. Well, to do that, we have a distance formula, which, if you remember, was derived directly from the Pythagorean theorem, and it is d equal x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And if you'll remember, this is really, I mean, if I were to square both sides, I'd have x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared equals d squared, which is really just the Pythagorean theorem, where this is a squared plus b squared, right, equals c squared. So when we have 2 points, we are going to substitute each of them in, and I'm just going to take this first one as x1, y1, and the second one as x2, y2 when I plug them in. So under my giant square root, I'm going to have, as x2, I'm going to have the number 9 minus -1. Make sure that you write all this out and don't skip steps to protect you from mistakes. And here, -13 minus -3 squared. Well, then I end up with d equals the square root of 9 plus 1, which is 10 squared, plus -13 plus 3, which is going to give me, again, -10 squared. So I'm going to end up with the distance, which is the square root of 100 plus 100, or d equals the square root of 200. And if I break that down, I know that d equals the square root of 2 times the square root of 100, right? I'm just simplifying my answer as we've been doing all along. I know the square root of 100 is 10, and my square root of 2 does not change. So my distance is going to be 10 square root of 2. Okay? So that is just using the distance formula. And the second type of problem is using the midpoint formula. And there we're just trying to find the midpoint between 2 points. So just as I did with 30, I'm going to do number 34. The number 34 gives us 2 points, the point -8, 0, and the point -8, positive 2. And here we're asked to find the midpoint. Well, if you'll remember, the midpoint is literally the middle of the x and y coordinate, the middle of the y's, right? If you have 2 points on a graph, just as a reminder, you have a point here and a point here, and the midpoint is going to be right here in the middle. Well, this midpoint is right in the middle, right between the x's, right? It's right in the center here between the x's, and similarly, it's right here in the middle between the y's. So the x is going to be the average of the x's, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And so your midpoint is always going to be, the x value is going to be the average of the x's, and the y is going to be the average of the y's. So let's use our values, our points. If I know that, I know my x value is going to be -8 plus -8 divided by 2, and my y is going to be 0 plus 2 divided by 2. I'm going to get -16 divided by 2, which is -8, and 0 plus 2, which is 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So my midpoint is going to be -8, 1. Okay, our last problem is going to be number 36. And this is a word problem that's going to be repeated on the test. And it says, I hope I have enough room. If not, I'll use another piece of paper. On a coordinate grid, an island is located at the point 1, 6. Another island is located at 4, 9. So island 1 and island 2. What is the distance between the islands if the distance between the consecutive grid line represents 2 miles? Well, when we find, now these are on a coordinate plane, right? So when we found the distance before, it was in units, right? So our first job is to find this on a coordinate plane, because then we're going to take the next step and say, oh, if the distance between basically 2 units, right, is 2 miles, well, that means 1 unit of distance is 2 miles. Don't think I said that as well as I could have. The distance between consecutive grid lines represents 2 miles. In other words, 1 unit is going to equal 2 miles. And so at the very end, once we find out the distance between these 2 islands, we're going to multiply by 2 to find out how far away they are in reality in miles. So we'll apply our distance formula first. Distance is the square root of x2 minus x1, which is 4 minus 1 squared, plus y2 minus y1, which is 9 minus 6 squared. When I do that, I'm going to end up with a square root of 3 squared plus 3 squared. So I'm going to end up with a square root of 9 plus 9, or the square root of 18. Square root of 18, if I break it up so that I can get, see if I can pull any numbers out, is the square root of 9 times square root of 2. Well, I know the square root of 9 is 3, and my square root of 2 can't be broken down any further. So I know that my distance in units is 3 square root of 2, and I'm actually going to write the word units here so that I don't confuse matters. Okay, well, I have 3 square root of 2 units, but I don't yet know how many miles, but I'm told every single unit is 2 miles. So if every unit is 2 miles, and 3 square root of 2 units is going to give me 6 square root of 2 miles. Okay, and that's the answer to number 36. Okay, so that is it as far as preparing you for the test. I would look over some of the questions on the test in the book because, as always, I will give you similar questions. Good luck, and actually I'll probably be seeing you to review it in person as well.